Hi, I'm Mike Bellevue, and as most of you know, I write for combat handguns and guns of the Old West and rifle firepower. But in this video, we're not going to be talking about a specific firearm. I want to talk about a product, and this product is called Sweetshooter. And this is a metal treatment. And what it is a very, very fine polymer that's in a solvent carrier. And it actually coats not only the surface of the metal, but it gets into the pores of the steel as well. And it really does slick up a gun, and it makes it much more corrosion resistant. You don't need to use hardly any lube at all, because this stuff provides a bearing surface. It's like using lube, so you don't pick up dust and grit. And when you treat the bore, if you season the bore, which we'll be doing in this, it really cuts down on leading or metal fouling. And also you get a little bit higher velocity out of it because the bore is slicker. So we're going to use this to treat two different guns that we have in-house. A Webley Mark 6 and an FEG high power. Now I've been using this stuff for about 7 years. I first used it for an article in Gun World, I guess about 7 years ago, on a 1911 pistol. And I've been using it on auto loaders, semi-auto pistols ever since. And I've kind of gradually expanded out. And as I got more and more into military surplus guns, a lot of which have pretty worn and damaged finishes, I found that this stuff really does give them a lot of rust protection on those worn finishes besides slicking the guns up. So we'll just show you the procedure for using this. Like the label says, Sweetshooter cleans, lubricates, and it protects against rust, all in one product. And the way it does that, and I gotta tell you, I am no scientist, so I'm just gonna have to go on what anybody can find on the website, but the way it does that is Sweetshooter contains a substance called Tecrolan. And Tecrolan is a polymer that's made up of sub-micron sized particles. And they're suspended in a carrier liquid, a solvent basically. So these tiny particles are drawn into the pore structure of the steel itself by heat. And I'll show you how that's done. And when everything is said and done, what it does is it leaves a micro-thin surface film, as well as leaving a film inside of the pores itself. It basically fills those up with those little submicron particles, and it becomes part of the pore structure. Tecrolan in Sweetshooter does not build up on itself, so it doesn't change any critical tolerances or dimensions. It just leaves this submicron thick film that's basically a dry lubricant. Now this stuff is pretty small. The biggest particle in Sweetshooter is only 3 microns. So that's what you're putting down your bore, and I'll show you how it works. In this video, we're going to use Sweetshooter to treat two guns. At the bottom is an FEG high power made in Hungary, and it's in pretty good shape. So it's typical of the pistols that you're going to be treating. And then on top is a World War I Webley Mark 6 revolver that basically has no finish left on it at all. And it has a little bit of pitting in the bore. And this is a gun that absolutely needs to get that metal protected. And we'll show you how we deal with both of them. Treating guns with the Sweetshooter is really pretty simple. I've got the two guns that we're going to treat here, and I've removed the grips from each of them, but you don't have to disassemble a gun. So really all you need to get going is a screwdriver. You're going to need either a glass bowl or a steel tank to hold the Sweetshooter, and I prefer to use a steel tank. And abundant sunshine, which if you live in Phoenix, I suppose you probably get all the time. But if you live where I live, you don't always get it. But I'm taking advantage of a sunny day here. I'm just going to pour this whole 32 ounces in. There we go. Okay. So, and all I'm going to do is I am going to dip the gun right in that solution, and I'm just going to let it sit in there for a while. And I'm going to let that solution kind of soak into it, then I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to put the next one in. Alright, so the high power has been sitting in this solution for not that long, maybe 15 minutes or so. I just like to get a good coating on it. I'm just going to let it drip off here for a little bit. And now I'm just going to put it right on this rack over a paper towel, and I'm going to drop the Webley in. The Webley is going to require a little more work. So I am going to get solution all over this. Now, this has to sit out in the sun for about 4 hours because the heat actually activates it. When the metal heats up, the pores open up and it draws the Tecrolan in. Now, the two guns I'm treating are drying off here in the sun. You've got to treat them like this 5 times. So you're going to be doing this over a course of days. And then the thing we'll do after that is we'll take them to the range for the final step in the treatment. But when you're done, you'll have guns that are well protected, much slicker running. Yesterday, we gave the two guns that we're doing, a high power and an old Webley Mark 6, a treatment with Tecrolan Sweetshooter. And we dried them out in the sun, natural sunlight, for 4 hours, which is the perfect way to do it. But I've got to admit, I don't live in Southern California or Arizona, and 2 sunny days in a row are almost impossible to come by here in central Pennsylvania. So this morning it's raining. So I'm going to show you plan B for curing Sweetshooter on a rainy day, which is to use a hairdryer. So I've got the high power soaking in the Sweetshooter. Just going to let it drip off into the pan for a minute. There we go. And I will just show you. We've got an empty gun here. So put it down. And I'm going to run a hairdryer. Turn it off just for a second. I'm going to run this hairdryer on high for 1 hour and 10 minutes. And that will get all the pores opened up and allow the steel to absorb the Sweetshooter into the pores, and we'll be done with the second treatment, and then I'll do the same thing with the Webley. Well, both of our guns now have had 5 treatments with the Sweetshooter, and they are now protected. But you can see it's got kind of leaves a little bit of a scuzzy film. All I'm going to do is polish them off with a soft wool cloth. I'm going to disassemble the automatic. I'll field strip it, but I'm just going to polish it and put the grips back on, and we'll be ready for the final step. All right, before I reassemble the high power, I'm going to grease the rails with some of the Sweetshooter slide lube. I've been using this stuff for like 7 or 8 years now on all of my semi-auto pistols. It just takes a little bit. I'm just going to put a little bit right on the rails. And this stuff is the best slide lube that I have ever used. And I've been using it for probably 7 years now. And I really would not use anything else. It doesn't take much. So that'll be fine. And now I can reassemble the high power, and everything will be good to go. Well, the guns are fully protected now, and even though there's nothing we can do to put finish on where it's gone, now at least the metal is stabilized, and we're not gonna have any rusting issues. As you can see, we picked up a little bit of a shine on this high power. I mean, it's a worn finish, but it's not bad. So these guns are fully protected now, but there's one more step that I'm going to take, and this is optional, but it's a smart thing to do, and that's to season the bore. And in order to do that, we're going to have to go out to the range, because what we're going to do is we're going to shoot 25 rounds through each gun, and in between each round we're going to swab the bore with Sweetshooter. And what that's going to do is the bullet going down the bore is going to burnish that Sweetshooter into the bore and into the rifling. And that's going to give you more corrosion resistance in the barrel. It's also going to smooth the barrel out, and it's going to make it slicker. So you're going to pick up a little bit more velocity by doing that, but the main thing that's going to happen is it's really going to cut down on any leading or metal fouling that can occur when you're shooting the gun, because the rough spots in the bore are going to be filled in. All those pores are going to be burnished smooth. All right, we're out here at the range to take the final step in the Sweetshooter process, which is to season the bore. The way I'm going to do that is to dip a wire brush in the Sweetshooter, and I'm just going to run it right down the bore. Just that simple. So once that's done, I'm going to open the action. I'm going to load all 6 rounds because it's a revolver. Because I'm going to swab it between each shot with one more run of Sweetshooter. And what this is going to do is it's going to burnish that Sweetshooter into the pores in the metal in the bore. Now, I can do this safely with a revolver. When the time comes to do the high power, we're going to have to load that each one at a time and swab it. But I'm always going to have an empty chamber under the hammer when I'm swabbing, because I will just have fired it. So I'm going to go off and shoot this round on Evil Roy, and I'm going to do this 25 times. And at the end of 25 times, this bore is going to be totally seasoned, and it's going to reduce leading and just be a wonderful thing. All right, well, we've got Evil Roy 15 yards downrange just to give us something safe to shoot at. I've swabbed the bore of the Webley with Sweetshooter, and I'm about to fire my first shot. And after every shot, I'm going to go back to the bench, and I'm going to run a wire brush with Sweetshooter back down the bore and come out and fire it again. All right, let's go swab it again. Well, we've already put 24 rounds downrange onto poor Evil Roy, swabbing with Sweetshooter between each one. So this is our final round to season the bore, and we should be good to go. So we'll just give Roy one more tinkle. And that's it. Bore is treated. Gun is completely treated with Sweetshooter. Now we'll move on to the high power. Well, we're finished with the Webley, so now we're going to season the bore on the Browning high power. This is actually an FEG high power. And the procedure is pretty much the same, except because this is an automatic, a semi-auto pistol, I'm not going to load up a full magazine and be swabbing the bore each time, right, with a bullet in the chamber. That's just not safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load 1 round in the magazine each time. So I'm going to swab the bore with Sweetshooter, and then I'll chamber this round and fire it, and I'm going to do that 25 times. And then we'll be done. We've got the FEG high power, and we swabbed the bore with Sweetshooter. Evil Roy is 15 yards downrange, and I've got 1 round loaded in the magazine, and I'm going to fire it over the Sweetshooter to start seasoning the bore. And now I'm going to do that 24 more times, and we'll be done. This is it, round 25 for the high power. This is the last round, treating the bore with Sweetshooter. So we'll go off, we'll fire this, and the gun will be fully treated. We're ready to shoot our 25th and final round with Sweetshooter through the Browning high power, and then this gun is done, and they are both done, treated and good to go. And that's it. All done, and that's how you do it. And the guns will be rust resistant and function a lot more smoothly.